Good evening, and thank you again for being here. I'm Lulu Freistad. I'm the co-founder and executive director of Smart Elections, and this is our poll watcher training part 2 for New York State for the primary for 2024. And I really appreciate everybody being here, appreciate your time and your enthusiasm and dedication. So the first thing that I want to do is go over the scanner voter forms and see we have any questions on them. It's really important that you understand those forms, that you understand the concept of why you're collecting the information, and specifically how to put the information into the form, how to print it out. You're going to have to print it out landscape. And so I just want to make sure that all of those details are really clear for you. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just share my screen and pull up that voter scanner form. And then we'll go ahead and kind of do a sort of a quick once over because I did bring it up I did spend some time on it last time, and I don't want to over explain it, but I want to take a look at it and then see if if you have any questions. And I have a few other photos to show you kind of that I think will help contextualize everything. So let's take a look at the form to start with. And this is a form that was emailed to you probably about maybe 15 or 20 minutes ago. And it's called 00_2024 voter scanner. And it is what do you call that? Excel form. And this is where you're going to be taking your notes for the actual poll watching. This form is really it's something that we developed with an election official and other experts, and it's turned out to be really useful because it has all of the information we need in a pretty consolidated way, and it's fairly easy for you to fill out, and that helps us understand the elections really across the state. And our goal is to have this poll watching in every county in the state within a few years. We did 5 pilot projects between starting in 2021, and we're really starting to expand out now. So this is the form. If you do not have Excel, which is a Microsoft program that they do charge you for, I use a program called Open Office, and it's free. And so you can open this with Open Office. You would go just onto the internet on any browser and search for Open Office and download that program. And it's a free program that allows you to do pretty much everything that Microsoft Office allows you to do. And I think it's a little less invasive. Microsoft kind of tracks your data a little bit, and I don't particularly care for that. So that's one reason that I use Open Office. But I think I have kind of an old version of Excel on my system, so I'm still able to open Excel documents as well. So I went over this before. It's very straightforward. You're going to put the location, not your home location. This is the location of the polling place where you are going, the address, the date that you actually go and do the observation, your name, and then the rest of this is filled in for you at the top. This is a certificate from Confidence PAC. I thought that you might be interested to know what Confidence PAC stands for. So I did send that out to you in your packets. It was a name that we came up with. It's an acronym, and Confidence stands for Committee for Oversight, Nonpartisan, Fair, Independent, Dependable Elections that are not confusing or evasive. So I don't I don't know if you get a kick out of that, but I wanted an acronym for confidence, and that's what we came up with. And that was really I really felt that was an honest expression. I do find that a lot of times the elections are confusing and evasive. And so that's our acronym. It is in your poll watcher guidelines if anybody asks you what the acronym stands for. It stands for I think I have the ability to share more than one screen at a time. Yeah, I go new share and then this one. So this is our acronym. This was in the packet that was sent to you. Committee for Oversight, Nonpartisan, Fair, Independent, Dependable Elections that are not confusing or evasive. Okay, so back to the voter scanner forms. That's our PAC confidence, and we are a nonpartisan project, but we are a political action committee through smart legislation. And if it's a little bit confusing, probably we have a number of different organizations because we have to for tax purposes. So Smart Elections is our larger organization. That is a nonprofit organization, a 501c3. And because it's a nonprofit, we do have limits on certain activities that we're allowed to do. And so Smart Legislation is our action arm, and Confidence is a committee, a political action committee of our action arm. So it's part of Smart Legislation technically. But our broader organization is called Smart Elections. So here are the voter check-in. This is where you put the voter check-in numbers. And basically, you're going to go ahead and enter into the polling place. And I have this all in the packet that I sent to you. It has very detailed instructions. So if we go back to that packet, I just had up, so it has the poll watcher guidelines. And it has all of this stuff, and I'm not going to go over it again. I went over it in a lot of detail on Monday about being polite and respectful at all times. Bring a pen and paper or a notebook. Don't touch the equipment. Don't interfere with the voting process or speak to voters. And then once you get through the etiquette, you're going to come down to the actual process. Begin the process described below. And you're going to get the data when it is not busy and you are not interfering with the poll workers process. So if there's a big rush of voters coming in, that is not the time to say, hey, I need to look at your electronic poll books. You stand politely to the side and you wait. One thing that is a little bit odd, and I don't think I got that into the, I need to get that into the poll watcher guidelines. Poll watchers in New York are not allowed to sit down. So don't sit down. We're not supposed to. So just stand politely to the side and wait until there's a lull. There's always a lull, I mean, usually there's a lull in the afternoon, or if you're there first thing in the morning, it's 5:30 a.m. Nobody's going to be there. You can go ahead and get started usually right away. At the end of the night, you're going to come basically 3 times. So here, e-poll books, you're going to check the number of voters who have checked in at each poll book table and write those numbers in your spreadsheet. And that's the spreadsheet that we were just looking at. This one. I think I'm going to share my whole desktop so I can go back and forward between these spreadsheets, the instructions and the spreadsheets. So this is the spreadsheet, and these are the instructions for the spreadsheet. So sorry, it's a little bit just trying to make
Where can I find the spreadsheet on the email you sent?
It's a form. It was attached, and it's called 00_2024 voter scanner. This
Okay,
is our
thank you.
voter scanner comparison. So you're going to print this out, and you're going to print it out landscape. If you don't know how to print things landscape, you have to, when you go to print, you usually press either Command or Control P, and then you have to go into your page setup, and usually it's set up for portrait. That's when pages go up and down, and you have to just switch a button over to landscape so that it prints correctly, and it's going to print in 2 pages for you. If you have trouble printing, then you're just going to email me and I'm going to walk you through it. My email is smartlegislation@gmail.com, and I can put that into the chat. If you have trouble, you're going to email or text me, smartlegislation@gmail.com, and my phone number is 917-543-2125. You can email or text me. So going back to your instructions, for the e-poll book, you check the number of voters who have checked in at each poll book table, and you write those numbers in your spreadsheet. And the times to go, if you're only going to go once, just go at the end. That's the most important time at the end. That's when you really want the numbers to add up. And if you're going to go more than once, then you're going to go early in the morning, if you can, like right when the polls open at 6 a.m. or just before, like 5:45, that's a great time to go. It's a little bit painful to get up that early, but you can always go and then you can go home and go back to sleep. So, um, so go ahead and shoot for those 2 times. If you want to, you can also do a midday check-in, but the most important is at night when it closes, and then the second most important is in the morning. What you're going to do is you're going to go up to that electronic poll book table. Usually there's going to be, if it's an average size polling place, they might have about 4 electronic poll books. Usually each district has its own poll book check-in, unless it's early voting, and then people check in at any station. It doesn't matter. What you're going to do is you're going to go up and you're going to ask the poll worker if you can please see the screen so that you can, I'm sorry, I'm going to mute people because the background noise is just going to drive me crazy.
Don't touch anything. Don't sit down. What happened?
I'm taking a moment to mute because it's distracting to have the background noise. So I have to locate participants and then mute. And then when we go into question mode, then I can unmute everybody. But for the moment, we're just going to mute. So I'm going to go back to sharing, and so you're going to go hopefully at the end when the polls close. I talked about this on Monday night. Do not go right at 9 o'clock. You will just infuriate them. Go at least by 8:30 p.m. and let them know that you are going to be getting those numbers, that you are there as a poll watcher. So when you arrive at the location, you identify yourself as a poll watcher, ask to see the inspector or the supervisor, be respectful at all times, give the inspector or supervisor your certificate, and sign into the book. Then when you go over to the poll table, you want to view the number personally. What you're looking for is the number of voters who have voted at that location. So each poll book, you want the number of voters who have voted. And sometimes they might just read the number off to you. They might say, okay, we had 72 people, but you need to see the number yourself. So if that happens, just say, I'm sorry, I'm instructed to read the number myself. Would you please turn the screen so I can see it? Thank you so much. Because you want to see that actual number. And if you're not sure where it is, just ask the poll worker and say, which is the number that tells me how many people checked in here. It's really obvious when you start getting used to this. The first couple times you might be a little confused, but you're going to get the hang of it really quickly. It's a small screen, like it's an iPad, and it just has a very obvious number, which is the number of the voters that have checked in so far. And you're going to put that number into your spreadsheet. So you're going to see which time you were there, like if you were there at the start of the day, and you'll be writing this in like with a pen or a pencil. So say you're there at 5:45 a.m. And then you go to table 1 and there's nobody who's checked in so far. If there's people who have checked in at 5:45 a.m., then you have a problem. And you should say, I think there's something odd here that someone's already checked in, except, and this is a very important exception, during early voting, they do not reboot those numbers each day. They run the whole string of days, 10 days of early voting, I think it's 9 or 10, as one day. And so the numbers just keep rolling. So if you come in at 5:45 a.m. and it's early voting, then yes, you're going to have numbers there already, because it's going to be, if you're on the 3rd day, it's going to be everybody who voted the 1st and the 2nd day. So in that case, if it's early voting, maybe you're going to have, I don't know, 75 people who have already checked in. Depends on how busy a polling location it is. But on a regular election day poll watch at 5:45 a.m., hopefully nobody's voted yet. And you're going to go through and you're going to check 0 at each station. Nobody's voted yet. There might be, say, 4 stations. A small polling location, maybe there's only 2 or 1. It really depends. You're going to try to go to a larger polling station. Those are the ones that are more important to check, unless it's really inconvenient for you. Then you're going to say to the inspector or whoever has been kind of interfacing with you, I'd like to check the scanners now. And you go to the scanners and you're going to check the scanners. Now there's a little bit more kind of to navigate with the scanners. The main number that you're looking for is what they call the public counter at the start of the day. Again, that public counter is hopefully going to be 0. And maybe there's like 4 scanners over there. So then you will add these numbers up, which at the start of the day is 0, and that's your poll books, the number of people who checked into the poll books, and you will add up the number of ballots that have been scanned so far. That's going to be 0. And you're going to bring the number of voters down here and compare it, and that's 0. And the difference is 0. And that's exactly what you want to see first thing in the morning on election day. You want to see that no one's voted yet. That's just common sense. So then when you come back at the end of the day, let's say that you're going to do 2, one at the beginning and one at the end. So say this is your second check-in, but say we'll put it here at the end of the day, and you're going to come back and say you're going to check it. By the time you have to wait till every single last voter has checked in at the end of the day. So it's probably going to be like 9 p.m. There maybe somebody's, still checking in at 9 and it's going to be maybe 9:05. It's not that big a deal to be, that precise, but you're going to be, more or less trying to get that time in. I think I put the wrong symbol in there, 9:05 p.m. So now you're going to come through and you're going to see how many voters voted all day long. And, if it's a busy election day in 2024 and a presidential election, it might be a fair number. So maybe say, let's say to make it easy, 75 people have voted that day. And at this poll book, maybe 100. And at this poll book, you just keep going down the line. This one was a little bit slow and they only had 50 people. And then this one had 125. I'm making these nice, easy numbers so that I can add them up easily in my head. So say here you have now, that's 200, 300, that's 350 voters who checked in so far. And you put that here. Okay, and now you're going to go over and get your number of, this is your public counter at the end of the day. And I'm going to explain in a minute the difference between the public counter and the protective counter. So the public counter is the number of ballots that have been scanned in that whole day. And so say you're going to come over here, and it really depends on how they direct traffic. At bigger polling sites, usually they have a line that forms like with one long line, and they just direct people one by one to each scanner. And so often it comes out, it surprised me the first time I saw it, but they might come out really almost exactly even. So you might have like 75 ballots scanned for and I'm just going to make the last one bigger because, again, it's going to make the math easier for me. So I think if that's 125, 150, 300, I think that would be 150, just to make it work out even. 5, 220, it's 150. No, sorry, 125. Okay. So say these are the numbers that you come up with. So this is 200, 350 ballots that have been scanned. And you put that in over here, the total number of ballots scanned, 350. And then you bring the number of voters who checked in from up here down to this column, and you check, and it matches. Hopefully, it's supposed to match. It may not match exactly. So I explained this also on Monday. Sometimes people come in and they get, a call or something, and they leave and they don't vote, or they just get frustrated with the ballot, or, who knows what happens with voters, but sometimes they don't always show up. They like check in, but they don't complete the process. So say this winds up being 120. And so then the number of scanners is actually 345. That is okay. You had 5 less ballots that got scanned than voters who checked in. It's not that unusual. People, they call them fleeing voters, people who come in and they just don't finish the process. Or, maybe they do vote, but they just don't scan it. They leave their ballot somewhere. People do weird things. That's not unusual. There's nothing wrong with that. To have less ballots than voters, it's okay. You don't want it to be a lot. It shouldn't be like, say if this is 110 and now it's down to 335, that would concern me. That's not necessarily something like illegitimate, like foul play, but it might just be poor administration. Like, why are the voters not completing their process? Maybe there's something, maybe it's a poorly administered site, something that, we're interested in. We want the elections to be well administered. So if it's too far off, I would definitely be concerned about that. That's a red flag. But within a range, 5 to 10 ballots less, I wouldn't be that concerned about it. So I'm going to put this back up to 125, which is what it was. And then that would make this 350. That's our ideal circumstance. We want the same number of voters and ballots scanned. Now, if this is 135 and this is 360. Wait, I'm sorry, I'm going to do it the other way around. If this is 150, and so then the number of ballots scanned is 375, and I have more ballots scanned than voters who voted, now I'm concerned. That is what you don't want to see. There should never be more ballots scanned than voters who check in. It's just common sense. Each voter has one ballot. How would you get more ballots than voters who check in? Now, I have had that. I showed you all on Monday. I went to a polling location and there were almost 700 more ballots scanned than voters who checked in. This is a cause of concern. We never got an explanation for it. But hopefully you're not going to see that. What we're hoping is that you're going to see a place where the numbers more or less add up. And so if they don't add up, then you're going to immediately text me or your team leader and let us know that you have a site where the numbers seem to be concerning. Okay, so that is your basic, that's the basics. You're comparing the number of voters who checked in the electronic poll books with the number of ballots scanned. And I'm just going to do one more thing that I hope won't confuse you. I'm going to actually show you a picture of the voting machines so that you can kind of get a sense of what it looks like when you're looking for those scanned ballots. So these aren't fantastic photos, and the reason is because we're really not allowed to take photos in a polling station. So we had to sort of scrape for these. We had an election official who gave us some, and we got some off a demo. So there's really right now 2 voting systems in use in New York State. We're starting to change that. There's 2 new systems, actually 3 new systems coming in. But for this election, I believe that you're still only going to see the Dominion and the ES&S scanners. For the few exceptions, I'm guessing that Ulster County might have their scanners switched over. I think I can't remember if they got Clear Ballot or they got Hart, but most of you are going to see either Dominion scanners or ES&S scanners. This is a Dominion scanner, and in this little side panel, that's where it shows you how many ballots have been scanned. And this is a close-up of that little side panel. This is system ready. That's before you scan it. You see there's 8 ballots that have been cast. And then after that, actually, that's where the ballot cast should go up to 9. So maybe this was at 7 before. This is when it's ready, it'll say system ready. And then after it's scanned, it has the number here of the ballots that have been scanned. So that's the number that you're looking for. That's the number that you're going to put in your spreadsheet. That's called the public counter. And in the Dominion machines, you can't see the protective counter number without going into the menus. It's something that's illegal, actually. They're supposed to, the New York statute says that the protective counter is supposed to be visible at all times to observers, and we're trying to get that changed. But for the moment, you won't be able to see it. And I'll tell you, so the protective, and I'll tell you in a minute what the protective counter is. Right now, this is just the public counter, and the public counter is the number of ballots that have been scanned that day on that machine. And this is kind of what the ES&S machine looks like. It's actually a little bit it's cut off a little bit here, but it's actually more of a rectangle, like a poll pad. It's a little computer screen. And I'm going to blow this up really big. And you're going to see right up there. Do you see where it says public count? It's kind of blurry. That on the ES&S scanners for counties that have ES&S, that is where the public count is. And you can see under that, again, it's very blurry and I'm sorry, but we're not allowed to photograph it during, when the polls are open. It says protective counter. And there you can see, again, it's blurry, but it's about, that one looks like probably about 5,178 or something like that. It's around 5,000. Now the protective counter is a big number. It's like your odometer on your car. It tells you every ballot that has ever been scanned since that machine went into service. And our voting machines have been in service, most of them for 10 to 12 years. So that number is going to be a big number. And you can put that number in your spreadsheet if you're in an ES&S county. And I'll just go back. Are you seeing the spreadsheet again? Okay, so that's a protective counter. Here it says starting protective counter and final protective counter. So you can put those numbers in where the odometer basically starts at the beginning of the day and where it finishes at the end of the day. You don't have enough room down here to do more than a start of day and end of day because we just wanted to keep these forms to one page. So if you do wind up going in the middle of the day, you could always just put those numbers on the back of the paper.
Sorry, we're not seeing, Lulu, sorry, we're not seeing the spreadsheet if you're showing it.
Okay, let me try again. Are you seeing it now? Sorry about that.
Yes.
Okay, so the public counter is the start of the day and end of day, and the protective counter, again, start of day and end of day. And if you go in the middle of the day, you can put those numbers on the back. But the start and the end are the most important ones. And then, so I'm going to show you a sheet that's already filled out with protective counter, and I'll show you kind of like why you can actually learn a lot about the protective counter from the protective counter number, because it also tells you if the machine is adding correctly. So this is the spreadsheet. I want to show you another one. Give me 1 second. I just want to show you one where the protective counter is filled out, and forgot that I wanted to show you this. I think it might be this one. So the protective counter is because it tells you all of the, here we go. I typed this one up. It tells you all of the ballots that have been scanned in the whole life of the voting machine. It also will tell you if the voting machine is counting correctly that day. Now, again, this is a little bit in the weeds, but I think you probably can follow this pretty clearly. Try to show you this. This was that place that I went to, and it did not have the right number of ballots as voters. And then I came back the next day to try to see what had happened, and their numbers were even further off, and it was very strange. And one of the things that showed us that it was strange was that the protective count was off. So the public counter at the start of the day was 240, and the public counter at the end of the day was 296. So that's 56 ballots that got scanned on that machine. Now, the protective counter at the start of the day was 4492. That's all the ballots that have ever been scanned on that machine in its lifetime. And then if you figure there were 56 more ballots added onto it that day, then you can go 4492. I'm on my calculator right now, and I'm going to add in 56 more ballots that got scanned that day. And I'm going to come up with an expected protective counter. Oh, wait. sorry, 56, 4492. That one doesn't seem right. I'm sorry about this. 6, that should be 56. I think I filled out this information wrong, but it's still not right. The expected protected counter I'm getting right now is 4548. And the final protective counter was 4595. It was a totally different number than what we should have expected. And what that said to us was that the machine itself was possibly just counting incorrectly. And there could be a lot of reasons for that. It could be that it's calibrated incorrectly and somehow it's not counting each page as it comes through, which would also give us concern about whether or not it's actually scanning the votes correctly. So it is important to put down that protective counter if you can and make that comparison. And we can go over that again. That maybe isn't the best form to show because it looks like maybe we had some math errors there. And part of this is also just, it's math and math isn't everybody's forte, but we do try to do our best to get the numbers accurate and compare them. Okay, so I am going to just take questions now and ask anybody who wants to go ahead and do you have any questions at this point?
I do.
Okay.
When you were showing the spreadsheet sheet and saying that the initial starting number may be off because of early voting, would that, all right, like where I go to vote, they have 4 tables. So if they had early voting, would that just be limited to 1 table and then the rest should be zeros? You
No,
see what I'm saying? As a polling
no.
place, would they hold it
Right.
to 1 table or would it be spread out?
So you're going to do 2 totally separate forms for early voting and for election day voting. So your early voting is probably going to be at least 4 tables because they tend to be at polling locations that are larger where they have more people coming. And you're going to go, maybe, I don't think you're going to want to go every day of early voting, but maybe you go the first day, one day in the middle, and the last day, and you're going to run that all on one sheet. So let me just pull up the blank sheet and clear it. And so we'll talk about how this might
Yeah, I'm just
go.
trying to figure out because I don't want, if I see some numbers, I don't want them to be skewed because I'm not understanding it correctly.
Yeah, it's tricky. And I think that's one thing to kind of keep in mind. If the numbers do sort of not add up, don't jump to conclusions and think like, oh my God, there's, some sort of fraud going on here. A lot of times there are explanations for why things aren't adding up. It can be that we don't know the full process. It can be that we ourselves have made a mistake in the math, but we do want to just like calmly try to get the numbers to the best of our ability. So I'm gonna we're going to look at this spreadsheet. You're going to do a separate spreadsheet. So if this is early voting, you would definitely keep this as a separate spreadsheet from election day voting if you decide to do poll watching for both. So if you go on early voting and you go the first day of early voting, first thing in the morning, these numbers are still going to be 0. First day of early voting, nobody is going to have signed in, hopefully. So you're at 0 for your poll books. But if you come back in the middle of early voting, so think of early voting as one long day of voting, and you come back the 3rd day of early voting, now you're doing your second check-in and you're coming, and you probably would put a date here. So maybe this is like, 4th day, and you could put a date down. I'd have to look at the calendar to see what the 4th day of early voting is going to be. 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks like that's going to be March 26th. So you could say check in March 26, 24, and it's the 4th day. Now, when you come to that table, you've had 3 days of early voting already, and the numbers are not going to be 0 anymore. You're going to come to that table. Even if you come at 5:45 in the morning, you have the previous days. So, maybe it's 221, maybe it's, 175 here. Maybe this is a district where nobody really shows up. Everybody voted absentee, or, the districts will vary, and then you can add those up. I'm just going to use equations now, so I don't have to worry about my math. So you can add those up, and that's 641. And now you're going to come down. You were there on day 1, and now you're there at this is going to be, again, the 4th day. So you could put here public counter, 4th day. And you have these as Excel sheets, so I don't know how comfortable you are with Excel sheets, but if you know that you're going the 4th day, you can do this at home on the sheet the way I'm doing now before you print it out, or you can just cross it out and write it in with a pen, what you were there. So you were there the 4th day. And now, again, you're going to look at that public counter and see how many you had. And again, just for the ease of use, I'm going to put these in a way that's easy for us to add up. So that's 350. So that's 175. So that was going to be, let's see how much that comes up to. Oh, let's get rid of these. These were our numbers from before when we were doing a different example. Okay, so that's 524, 641 minus 524. $117 should do it. Okay, so now you're there at the 4th day, first thing in the morning, and this is what you hope your numbers are going to look like. You're going to pull that 641 down from the sheet before, and you're going to say, yep, my numbers match, 641, 641, 0 difference. And then you're going to come the last day, and you can just scratch this out if you want to, or you can put the numbers over on the back, like I said, for your last day, if you come more than once during early voting. And then you're going to see, say you come in at the end of the last day of early voting. That's really when you want to come, because that's when you find out at the very end if the numbers match up. That's the most important time. So you come down here and figure out, if there's 350 people who have signed in. Again, just for ease, I'm going to just kind of make it the same. And now you can go over, on the back of the paper and do your scanners. And if the scanners hopefully are those same numbers, 350, 350, 350, 350, and it comes out to 1,400. So you'd have, 1,400 of the poll tape on the poll book and 1,400 on the scanners. And you would just label that on the back, last day early voting, which would be March 30th. So that's what you're hoping, is kind of to check throughout the process at different times to make sure that they're matching. And then when you come in for election day, you're going to have a totally different form that's totally clean, and you're going to do the same process again, but that's going to happen all in one day. Okay, I'm going to take some more questions. Bruce?
Yes, thank you. I put both of these in the chat, but is there a problem if you're working as an election inspector? Could you actually do this poll watching work at the place where you're working? Is there a conflict of interest or anything wrong with doing that?
No, there's no conflict of interest. We are a nonpartisan organization, and this is nonpartisan election observation. We are going to have to get our certificates from a candidate or a political party, but we've been very clear in all of our public statements that we're a nonpartisan organization and we are not supporting or opposing any candidate, or any political party. So, and we have had election inspectors do this. It's a little bit hard sometimes if you're a busy election inspector, but it really does not take that long. It honestly just takes 5 or 10 minutes to go through the poll book and put the numbers down and go to the scanners and put the numbers down and do the math. Especially once you get used to it, it goes really quickly. So yes, you could be an inspector and do this. Patty? I'm going to go on Walt.
I'm
Oh.
sorry, I was muted. Sorry.
I
Yes,
know.
that was along the line of the questions I was going to ask, because I'm going to work election day. I do believe I think they would they kind of depend on me to be there. So, so you could go in, I think I could manage that if I did that on the election day. Now, say I was to go in, say there is another person already there. Is there some, because I noticed sometimes there are poll watchers. I mean,
Yeah.
is this like a territorial thing, or, I mean,
It's
could
not
how would I
supposed to
handle
be.
it?
Yeah,
Well,
every candidate is allowed to have 3 poll watchers per
okay.
location. So
Okay.
it shouldn't be a competitive thing. The only
Oh,
thing about
okay.
being a poll worker where you might get into, it might be tricky, more tricky than if you're an inspector. Inspectors tend to have a little bit more mobility because they're not stationed at one particular location and they can kind of move around. Sometimes if you're a poll worker, you might be stationed at your poll
Right.
book and you have to stay
Right.
there.
Oh,
So
yeah,
they
yeah,
need you
yeah.
there right up until the last
Yeah.
minute. And then you can't sort of leave that station and go
Right.
and write down the numbers for the other poll books.
Right.
So the other thing you could consider if you're working election day as a poll worker, maybe do observation in early voting, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's another question I was going to ask. Now, I work full time, so I was going to take that election day off and then do that. Now, early voting, I guess, is like, the week before and on even to the weekend, like that Saturday.
Yeah. So I don't know if you all
so-
got this little form that had, they sent this to me in the mail and it had all the dates for early voting. So it's kind of handy. And
Yeah.
their last day of early voting, it looks like is Saturday, March 30th. So I don't know if you
Right.
work on Saturdays, but
No.
that would be a great day. The last day of early
Right.
voting is a great day to go and
Right.
observe because now you're
Right.
checking the numbers for the whole
Right.
length of early
Right.
voting. And if you're there the last, at the closing of early voting, that's a great
Right.
point to
Okay.
check.
Of
That
early
would be
voting.
great to
Okay.
have you there. Or,
Okay. All right.
any
Go
day
ahead.
that you can go is useful, but there are days that are more useful than others. Bruce,
Right.
thanks for that
Oh, yes,
question, Patty.
Oh,
my other
you're welcome.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Okay. When you check in the voters at the beginning of the day on the poll pads, now the election inspectors are supposed to check in too. That's a different count, I would say, though, isn't it? It wouldn't appear in the voter count place.
I mean, I have never been a poll worker, so I don't know all of the ins and outs of their paperwork. They do reconciliation. I don't know if it's parallel to our reconciliation. I know that when I've found problems, they were problems that they didn't seem to locate in their reconciliation, which concerned me. So you'd have to check in with your poll workers or your election officials as to exactly what their procedures are.
Yeah, I like I said, I've worked that and I've checked in on a poll pad in the morning with all the other inspectors that check in. I just didn't notice if it came up in the voter count. I
have an
can't
answer. I have an
you can't-
answer for that.
Yeah, go ahead, Walt.
The inspector check-in has nothing to do with the giving out of ballots. The counter only counts every time it prints a ballot for a voter.
Okay,
Is that clear?
thanks. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for the question, Mark.
If a voter's having trouble voting and you notice it, is it illegal to approach them like outside the 100-foot mark of the polling place to find out the details of the problem they're having, such as if they refuse them to vote because they said they already voted?
Oh, I see. We are not supposed to approach voters. So if it's outside the 100 feet, like outside the polling station when they go to their car or something, there's nothing technically illegal about that. Generally, we try to get our information from the election inspector. So if a voter is turned away or I see that there's an issue, I'll usually go to the inspector and I'll say, hi, can you just tell me what happened? And sometimes they're not that forthcoming, but usually if I'm polite, I'll sort of get the information out of them. They'll be like, yeah, something happened. And I'll be like, well, could you please tell me the details? We'd like to, we're supposed to take note anytime something occurs, anytime there's some sort of problem with a voter. Could you please tell me what happened? And then they might say, well, as far as we could tell, that person had voted previously, or you know what I mean? Hopefully you get the detail from the election inspector. In general, we are not encouraged to speak to or interact with voters in any way.
Would we note that on the back of the sheet, or are we
Yeah,
interested if somebody?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Put some notes down there. So we have other notes that there's things that we really want you to look for, but anything, that you think is interesting, and you're going to do your own written report, hopefully also, even if it's just a few sentences or a page. Trying to get this to show me the sheet again. So here's the form, and then the second page of the form has some specific things that we want to look for. Accessibility. Is the site accessible via ramps, lifts, or elevators? And also, if check for these are things like, imagine that you are a person with a disability. I have a friend and she doesn't have any arms really. She just has kind of little stumps for arms. And so if she goes and there's a door, there's like a ramp for her wheelchair, but she goes up to the door and the door is like a big heavy door that you need to open with arms, like with hands that you have to grab it and open it. That's going to be a problem for her. So we need to make sure that these sites are fully accessible. If there's a door that requires opening, like with a handle, is there a person outside there to help? Or is there a door, an automated door somewhere? Is there a ramp? Can somebody with a wheelchair or a walker get not just into the building, but to the location where the polling machines are? Is there an elevator if needed? Is it a fully accessible site? Is the ballot marking device plugged in, turned on? Has a voter used it? Did they have any problems with it? Sometimes they have a lot of problems with the ballot marking devices. So you can ask, did you have any problems with it? We're going to get into poll tapes tonight. I hope that we're going to have time for that. So we'll go over that in a bit. If the numbers don't match, I would say ask for the list of voters who voted at that location. They can print it out for you. And if the numbers don't match, ask for the summary poll book report. Again, that's a report of all it's sort of a several page report from the electronic poll book of all the people who, the numbers, how many voters checked in, how many ballots were printed. How many affidavits, for what reason? And most of you probably know an affidavit ballot is what happens when somebody comes and they're not listed in the voter registration, but they say like, I want to vote, or I think I am a registered voter. Then they are asked to vote via an affidavit ballot. The main reason why that happens lately is because they changed the law. And if you request an absentee ballot, even if it never arrives, then when you go to vote on election day, you will not be allowed to vote on the regular voting machine because they sent you that absentee ballot. And those ballots do get lost in the mail. They do get, or sometimes people just change their mind and they don't want to vote absentee. But if they have been sent an absentee ballot and they come to the poll on election day, they're going to have to vote affidavit. And so that's usually the reason you might have 5 or 10 of those. And then if the person has not voted so far, if when they go and look, that person did not actually vote their absentee ballot, then their affidavit ballot will count. How many void or spoiled ballots, for what reason? Did the voting machines, electronic poll books, or other equipment break down or malfunction? Were all the seals properly placed on the voting machines, ballots, and media? Were the ballots transported by an officer, name and badge number? How many officers or people escorted the ballots? And if the ballots are transported by individuals, what is their political affiliation, if you can find out? So those are some of the questions that we ask you to ask, but if you have other observations, I would say, again, just flip the paper over, bring a paper and a notebook and take some notes. Walt, you had more questions?
Yes, so you're saying that you can work as an election inspector and a poll watcher simultaneously?
I think you could. For this particular project, I don't think it's too
Okay, do you think it's
difficult.
possible that it might be different in 62 counties, different according to each county?
I don't think it's different in terms of the law. For the law in New York, to be a poll watcher, you just have to be a registered voter in your county. So for everybody on this call, if you're not a registered voter in your
Okay.
county, you cannot be a poll watcher. You must be
Okay.
a registered voter. Other than that, you're allowed to be a poll watcher.
Okay, one more question. You mentioned that a poll watcher is not allowed to talk to the voters, but if you're doing it simultaneously as an election inspector, you are allowed to talk to the voters. Is that a contradiction? And isn't that a
Well,
reason to tell you can't do it simultaneously?
I don't know what to tell you. We have had election inspectors who were poll watchers. They tended to do it, I think, quietly and inconspicuously. I don't think they made a big deal of the fact that they were doing our poll watching project. They just kept the form with them and then, quietly put down the numbers when they had a few minutes.
Yeah, I can
So
do. Okay.
yeah, I wouldn't make a big deal out of it. Hey, I'm poll watching this year too. But I don't think that if somebody says something and they're concerned about it, then maybe, if the election commissioners say they don't want you doing both jobs, I think we would try to respect that.
Well,
But
somebody I was talking to didn't think that you could do it on alternate days, let alone simultaneously.
alternate days, I think is fine. I cannot
Yeah.
see why you couldn't do it on alternate days.
Okay.
So the best thing maybe is to check in with your commissioners and just
Okay.
ask them, I'm part of this poll watching project and I would like to poll watch. It's not very much work. I just have to fill in a few numbers. It just takes a few minutes. Do you mind if I do that while I'm being an inspector? And, if they say no, then don't. You could say, well, could I do it on a different day? I mean, you
Okay.
don't even really have to ask them if you could do it on a different day, because if you have a certificate, you're
Yeah.
allowed to go whenever you want when the
Right.
polls are open with a certificate. And if you're not signed up as an election inspector, there is absolutely nothing to prevent you from being a poll
Right.
watcher on that day. If you have the certificate.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Janice? You're muted.
All right, this is probably a stupid question.
There are no
But,
stupid questions. No stupid questions.
Why do we have two primary election dates? I see one is presidential and the other one is for federal, state, and local. One's in right now and one's June. But and then the general in November, right?
Apparently.
And so, and you were interested in us doing it for all three?
I think we have to see what the interest level is. I think it's good to do it for the presidential primary. I'm not sure what races are on that June ballot yet. Do you know?
I don't know. Well, no, but there's the presidential is already determined pretty much.
Right. It won't be
And
the presidential. Our presidential is now in March.
Yeah,
right.
but Biden both.
But I mean,
They're
is there
both-
a reason for us to be doing this for the presidential when it's already pretty much determined?
It is very helpful. We want to do this in November, and in my experience, it takes a little bit to get your sea legs. So the first couple times you go, it's a little bit unnerving. You're not familiar with the process unless you've been a poll worker, previously. And even if you have been a poll worker, you haven't been there as a poll watcher, and you're looking at this technology that you're not familiar with. And most of the time when you first go, they're going to tell you, no, you're not allowed to do that. And then you have to say, well, here are the statutes and I am actually allowed to do this. And I just have so many people, the first time they go, they call me and they're like, Lulu, they didn't let me in. And so I went home. And I'm like, well, you need to politely, but firmly say, well, I am allowed to do this. But it's just really good to have a test run, you know, to get out there and get it done. And to be frank, maybe not in this election, but in New York, the primaries are really where it happens because we are such a divided state. Downstate, it's the Democrats, and upstate, it's the Republicans. And the primaries are usually where the big decisions are made. So I think it's very good for us to get into the habit of monitoring the primaries, especially in New York. I don't know about the June primary. I'm not sure that we'll have interest to monitor that. But again, it is another time to practice basically, and for people to get used to looking at the technology and the equipment. And, you know, there's nothing like doing it yourself. I can explain it to you multiple times, but when you go and do it yourself, you're going to get the hang of it and you're going to be like, oh, I get it. I see how this goes. Joe?
Yeah, going back to the 3 primary thing, April 2nd is the presidential primary. And if we're gonna start practicing, so to speak, on the April 2nd primary, how do we get credentialed for that? Because there's no local candidates in that primary. The local candidates don't go into the primary elections until June 25th.
Right. I think we're going to have to do it from the political parties. So we can get certificates from the political parties. Normally, there's a referendum on the ballot, and this is how we've been managed to do our observation a lot of the times now, is because we take a position on a referendum, and then once we take a position on the referendum, we, as this confidence pack, are legally allowed to have observers to check the results of that referendum, which winds up meaning we can check the whole ballot. So, that is how we've done it in a lot of elections in the past. But you are absolutely right, Joe, and that's a very good point. We're going to have to get those certificates from the political parties. So, you know, it also may be that the candidates have local offices. This is what I'm also thinking. So you know, Biden or there's other candidates on the Democratic primary ballot, and there's Trump, and there's still multiple candidates on the Republican ballot. They may have local offices, like, you know, campaign offices that would be willing to give you a certificate. They're still on the ballot, even those candidates that have dropped out.
Not in April.
No, I saw the ballot.
Oh, okay.
I saw the sample ballot. Everybody's still on there. Nikki Haley's still on there. Vivek Ramaswamy's still on there. They're all on there.
Oh,
So,
okay.
any of those, like, you know, representatives from those candidates will be able to give us a certificate. So what I did, I sent everybody an email, and I asked you in that email, do you know a candidate, which in this case would mean probably like a candidate's, you know, representative in your region, or a political party that you could get a certificate from. So meaning, do you have a relationship with the local, you know, Republican Party, or the local Conservative Party, or the local Green Party, or the local Democratic Party? You know, you're going to know what your relationships are. If you're friendly with somebody who's like, you know, somebody who's active in the party, you may be able to reach out and just shoot them an email and say, hey, do you think I could get a poll watching certificate from the party for this primary? If not, we're going to be working those connections and trying to get certificates for everybody. So the first thing for us to determine is who can get certificates on their own, because if you can get a certificate on your own, then we don't need to, you know, kind of put our feelers out. And I see that Bruce is saying Monroe County Republicans can easily get certificates. So that's great. That's great for us to know. And Bruce, do you think that you could kind of head that up if I sent you a list of the number of people that we need from Monroe County, that you might be able to coordinate getting them certificates? I'm not sure. Bruce might have stepped away. So I
put it in the chat, but yes.
Oh, that's the yes. Okay. Wasn't sure what that was in reference to.
Don't mean to interrupt you, Lulu, but I got a question. You're talking
Okay.
about Republicans and Democrats. I'm an independent. Does that mean I cannot do this?
It does not mean that you can't do this.
Okay. All right.
Really,
I want to waste my time or your time.
No, I'm nonpartisan.
Yeah, you're nothing. So.
You are going to have to get your certificate from a party is the only thing, unless that somehow rubs you the wrong way or you just feel like you couldn't do that. There are independent parties. There's, you know, the Libertarian Party, the Working Families Party, the Green Party. There's, I think, the rent is too high party. There's like, you know, a lot of different political parties. As long as they have a column on the ballot, I think that they will be able to give us certificates. So the first thing for us to figure out is, you know, what counties we have observers in, who can get their own certificates, and then we'll start to figure out where we can get these other certificates from. So it sounds like we would be wanting to reach out for you.
Okay.
I'm going to just keep taking questions here. Esther? I'm going to try to unmute everybody who has their hand up, so you'll be ready to talk when you're up in line. The queue right now is Esther, Kim, Walt, and then Patty again. And thanks so much for these questions. They're great questions. Esther? I'm going to move on to Kim. Kim?
Oh, you had asked the question about like what the June primary. I mean, that's state senator. There might be on some of the I don't know about the Democrat side. I don't think so, but on the Republican side, we might have some competition there. But also all of your congressional seats, and I know there's definitely competition in that primary. You know, so I would think we definitely want to do June, because that would be important where, you know, the representatives for each of the parties might be chosen at that point in time. And then I was, you actually, I was going to say one other thing about the fact that, you know, we want to practice it, but you mentioned that. So, you know, it doesn't matter that much for the primary. That's correct. But, you know, it's not going to hurt to go when there's not a lot of pressure and not a ton of people to figure out what we're doing. And then we'll know for June and November.
I think those congressional primaries are really important. I'm glad you brought that up. Those are going to be extremely competitive, both in the primary and in November. So I definitely think that's a great opportunity for us. So keep in mind those June dates, and hopefully you'll have a good experience in March and April and want to come back in June. Esther, I'm going to ping you again. You got your hand up. Did you have a question? Walt?
Yes, you, there may be several districts in one building, and you said you had to get a certificate for each district, but you also said you don't want to alert the BOE as to which location you'll be going to. But don't you have to? Because I don't know what districts are going to be in a particular building. I have to ask the BOE, right?
Well, then we try to get a global list. In New York, we have a global list of all of the districts in each location.
How can I get that list?
It's really hard. They make it so difficult. We'll try to get it in each county. I don't know why they make it so hard. And in New York, it's crazy. I don't know if I have it readily available to show you, but there's so many districts in New York City, and you have to let me see, count the vote documents, New York poll watcher documents. I don't think I have it readily available to show you. They what the document that you're looking for. Draw. No, it's like it's a PDF, and it has, the print is so small, you have to blow it up either with a magnifying glass, or you have to blow it really big on your computer, because it is just packed, like long lists of all the election districts in each location. And it's very hard to find it on their website. Anyway, we'll work on it. So we don't have to tell them where we're going. We'll just, you know, get the comprehensive information from them, each polling place, what districts are there. And then when you decide what districts you're going to want to go to, then we'll make you those certificates. Let's keep moving. Walt, that was your question, right?
Yes.
We're on Patty.
Okay, yeah, hi. Okay, so this may be a silly question. So we get our certificates. I do know some people in the local, I work with some. So I could get a certificate now, but it's not for presidential. So if I get this certificate from like one of these local people, like a congressman or rep, is it good for the presidential election? Or did I don't know.
It's either a candidate who is on the ballot or a political party. So
Okay.
if it's a candidate on the ballot, this is the presidential primary, that's going to be one of the candidates, Democrat or Republican or independent, that are on the ballot or their office. So if you happen to know, if you're a Trump supporter and you happen to be in touch with like the local Trump office, you might be able to go to them and say, hey, can I get a certificate from you? And then again, for that certificate, they just sign it. Usually they sign a blank one and then we fill in. We usually make copies of it because like I said, if you're going to go to one polling place, like Walt said, there's going to be multiple districts there. So we might have to make 10 copies or you might have to make 10 copies and then fill in the election district for, each there might be at one polling place like 10 different election districts, and they would give you like kind of a blank certificate with their signature, and then you would fill in your name and everything like that if you wind up doing it. Does that make sense?
Right. So, well, kind of, but so it just isn't clear in my head. So if I get in touch with the presidential, someone in the presidential organization, I can get for the presidential election, but I still have to have a certificate for the local election. One of the
No.
guys that's on the ballot. No?
Not for April.
No?
April is the March and April is the presidential primary. There's nothing on the ballot except
Right,
the president.
right.
So you
Oh,
don't
so
need,
okay.
you just
Okay.
need any candidate on the ballot or a political party that can give you that certificate.
Okay. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess it does, but I'll probably get something wrong.
Well, what else are you confused about? There's no
well, I'm
stupid
just-
questions.
Well, it's just, I'm gonna have to make sure that there is somebody, I'm pretty sure that these local people that I work with are on the ballot. And I'm gonna call them and see if I can get the certificate.
Okay,
think
you
I can
think
do
they're
it.
on the ballot in June in that local ballot, in that local race?
Must be in June, yes.
Okay, so
Mhm.
that will not do us any good because this is,
For
we're
April.
not, for
Okay.
April. That'll be great in June, but for April,
Okay.
you're gonna need a political party or a presidential
Okay.
candidate or their office.
Okay, so, okay, party, okay, I got you, all right, or
Okay.
presidential office, okay,
Good.
thank you.
I can tell you got
Okay.
it now. Okay, Kim, your hand's up
Yes.
from before, or you have more?
Yeah,
No, I had more.
Great.
Am I unmuted?
You are unmuted.
Okay, I couldn't remember if I did it while I was waiting. Sorry. I wanted to point out that there's also a special election in Erie County as well for the congressional seat held by Higgins, and I'm just not remembering the number. So that I think is, I just can't remember when early voting starts for that. So that's another opportunity that we should, at least locally here in Western New York, we can get involved in.
Is that,
I'll get
that's a,
those dates.
that's a separate date?
It's a separate date. Yeah, they've got the presidential primary, and then I think like almost immediately after they've got this special election for the congressional seat because Higgins retired or left, and then of course you got their June primary. But I'm not 100% sure of the date, so I'll get them.
Okay, so that's Higgins retired in Erie County?
Yeah, I just don't remember anybody know what district Higgins was, and then there's
I think it's 63.
Was it
63.
63?
I
Okay.
think
That's
yeah,
a
so it's-
congressional?
It's a congressional election. Yep, a special
Okay.
election.
I
Kind of
just,
fun.
I
It's a
find it
fun
so,
year.
they waste so much money. It costs them so much money to do each of these elections separately. They have to pay for the election workers. They have to pay for the equipment to, be rolled out and then rolled back in. And that if they would combine them, they would save so much money. And also it really decreases voter turnout because voters do not want to come out again and again and again to vote. There's actually legislation in the works that requires, I think, a constitutional amendment, but there is legislation in the works to try to combine some of these local and federal elections into the same date. And states that have done that have seen really large increases, like 20% increase in voter participation. So we really support combining the elections. But thank you so much for all of your local knowledge about, when these are going to take place. That's very good. Esther, I'm going to go back and see if maybe you're still with us.
I think she said something through the chat.
Okay.
She was
Yeah,
having a
she
hard
can't
time.
unmute herself for some reason.
Yeah.
I can't figure out why
I
my
just saw
microphone
a
isn't
little
working.
note, so
One
not
of the-
that I'm
Okay, I
computer
see it now.
savvy or anything,
One
but
of the things we're supposed to do is make sure the seals are properly placed. Are you going to cover that? Oh, that's a good question. It's kind of self-evident. I'm going to be frank. I don't think much of the seals. They're like these little red, little thin plastic strips, and they put them on and kind of jimmy them tight, kind of like a they're definitely more sturdy than a twisty. But I've been to DEF CON and I've seen them actually get the seals off in like 3 seconds. DEF CON is like this huge hacker conference, and they have competitions where they compete to see who can get the seals off the fastest without damaging the seal in any way, and then also getting it back on. And I've seen them get these seals off in a matter of seconds. So they don't impress me, but it is important. They are supposed to be on there. The other thing is that they're all over. If you go down to the Board of Elections, those seals are just lying around everywhere. So if
But
somebody,
one thing you're missing is that they have serial numbers on them, which have to be recorded on the canvas sheet. And the next person that approaches that machine has to check if the serial number of that zip tie is the same as what was recorded.
do they check them, Walt? Do they check them?
At the Board of Elections, they do, yeah. The other thing is the only thing we use plastic zip ties for is for the ballot boxes. The zip ties that go on the machine are stainless steel cable. You need a pair of wire cutters to cut, and they're serial numbered as well. So the chain of custody is pretty good on the serial numbered seals.
I'm glad to hear that. That makes me feel a little better.
Mhm.
I appreciate that information.
Okay.
So to answer Esther's question, maybe do you want to answer it, Walt? You want to talk about how the seals go on?
What was the question?
She wants to know how the seals go on, because people are going to observe that and just check that on their box that the seals went on. They go on, as you mentioned, there's like a whole kind of packet, like a pouch, almost like a pencil pouch that they put the flash drives in. And then there's
Mhm.
another, and they definitely are supposed to put a seal on that. There's seals on the
There's
voting machines.
There's a huge canvas sheet about 2 feet by 3 feet with all the information that's supposed to be penned in by the inspectors. Like the number of ballots used, how many were wasted, affidavit ballots, all those numbers have to go on the sheet, as well as the serial numbers of the seals that you're going to be using.
And then, but they put, in my recollection, they put seals on the packet where the flash drives are. They put seals on
Yes.
many different ports of the voting machine itself. Usually about 4 different locations on the voting machine has a seal. They put
Right.
seals on the ballot boxes.
Mhm.
And then
Like I said,
usually
the
there's
ballot-
like a big sort of packet that things get rolled up in. And I think that whole kind of big bundle gets a seal as well, right?
Yeah, those get yes, there's seals on everything. The unimportant items will get plastic seals. The important items will get the stainless steel cable seals.
That's great. So you're just watching that. You're just watching to see that everything that you think should be sealed gets
Mhm.
sealed. I don't
Yeah.
have an actual checklist for you, but we could make a checklist of everything that's supposed to get sealed, and we could send that out, as we can do an addendum on that.
Mhm.
April 30th is the Western New York special election. Thanks for that, Kim. Okay, so I think we might have answered all the questions at this point. That is great. We got through the questions. So I want to talk a little bit about the poll tapes. Now, if you don't want to worry about poll tapes, don't worry about poll tapes. If you have the energy to take a photograph of the poll tapes at the end of the night when you are there, then it's useful. And I will show you why it's useful. So first I want to show you what a poll tape is. And I have these photographs of poll tapes. Then I think the best thing first is to show you the actual whole poll tape. And then after that, I can show you what it looks like if you take photographs of the poll tape. So let's see, I think I had this one queued up. Yeah, great. Okay, so poll tapes are kind of like, they're almost like cash register tapes, and each voting machine prints them out at the end of the night, and it has all of the election results on it for each candidate that voting machine has recorded in the course of the evening or the course of the day. And it looks like that is just our website, but okay, on this page, we actually have a picture of a poll tape. So are you seeing my screen?
I got a blank screen in front
No.
of
It's still
Yeah,
loading.
yeah, I don't see anything.
Okay, let me try again.
I see you, Lulu.
Okay. I'm happy that you're seeing me, but I want you to see the poll tape right now. Okay, let's try it again. Now are you seeing the poll tape?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this poll tape is from Georgia, actually. In Georgia, they are legally required to post the poll tapes outside the polling location, like on the door. Here in New York, they are legally required to either post them on the wall, and it's rather brief. It's just for a little window of time before they take them down and then put them into their bundles. But there is a few minutes there where you can take photographs of them. Sometimes they're very long. You're going to see how long this one is. Do you see how long it is?
Yes.
Yeah, it's all of the results that the voting machine has tabulated in the course of that election. So it can be quite long. And the other thing, this one is like printed so nice and clearly with dark ink, but many times the ink is actually very light and it's actually really hard to read them. Sometimes, I know, sometimes what they'll do, they're so long, is they'll just put them out on the floor and you can go along the floor and sort of take snapshots of them, or you can do video. And if we have time, I'll show you this app that helps you to record video. You can do it with your smartphone. You might need somebody to help you to hold it flat. Sometimes they come off a roll, so they can be a little hard to get flat. And then you just take your camera and go down the length. You have to go slowly so that it actually is in focus and record the whole length of the poll tape. Or the other option is you can do a series of snapshots. And I do have a PDF that shows you what it looks like if you do a series of snapshots. The way to do the snapshots is to keep in mind that you need the bottom of one picture to be the top of the next picture so that you know the order of the snapshot. So here, this is like one page, and you can see at the bottom here, it has surveyor and it has this county information. The location is Selden Park. And then if you go to the next snapshot, you can see the voting location in Selden Park is at the top of the, and this was surveyor, this was the bottom of the other one. So the still photos are overlapping so that when you put that sort of jigsaw puzzle together, you know what order they go in. So here you can see Chief Magistrate is at the bottom of this photo, and then Chief Magistrate is at the top of this photo. US Senate is at the bottom of this one, and then it's at the top of this one. The Soil and Water is at the bottom of that one, and then it's at the top of this one. Now you got down to statewide referendum at the bottom here. Statewide referendums at the top here, and then this is US House District at the bottom and US House District at the top, and you're down to the signatures there, and then just the very bottom. So the reason why you want to take photographs or evidence of the poll tapes is that the poll tapes are our last known point of reference of what the election results are supposed to be before they go through a whole series of electronic systems. They go onto flash drives and then they go into the election management system. They get transported first downtown or they get modemed. Then they go onto the election management systems. They're computers, big computers that pull the data off of the flash drives and then aggregate it, distribute it up onto like websites, and any number of accidents or intentional manipulation can happen in the course of that process. And so what I am going to show you is a poll tape where that in fact was documented. So this was in Shelby County, which is Memphis, Tennessee, and I believe this was 2015. This was from Benny Smith, who's someone that we work with, and he took a picture of the poll tape at his at a local polling station in Shelby County, and on election night there were 548 votes on that poll tape that came off of the machine. But when they posted it online, there were only 330 votes for that location. And each candidate's votes had gone down. Harold Collins had gone from 175 to 106. Strickland had gone from 88 to 51. Wharton had gone from 162 to 102. And Mike Williams had gone from 111 to 64. And there turned out to be about 4 counties where the votes had disappeared. And unfortunately, they were all predominantly Black counties, and it seemed that in that particular location, there was some sort of effort to suppress the Black vote. And but we have seen this in other elections as well. Sometimes it's just an accident where one of those flash drives gets lost, and so you never get those votes recorded from that flash drive unless you have that poll tape, which was the document that the votes exist. We actually saw that in an election in 2020 in Georgia, where they lost the flash drive initially, but then when they went through and audited, they noticed that the flash drive was missing and they located the votes. But we also had been auditing and we had poll tapes of that location, and we also let them know that they had lost a flash drive and they had lost votes. So in that case, they got recovered because there were 2 actual ways that it got recovered. We had taken pictures of the poll tapes, and then the election officials themselves actually found it in an audit that there were votes missing. So that is why you would want to take a photo of the poll tape. It is kind of a lot of work, and then you have to go online and check that the results from that location are accurate, if you could even get them. Sometimes they don't even break them down by location, so you have to do a public records request and request the votes broken down by location. So it can be a bit of a hassle, but it is good just in terms of like what Kim's talking about our practice and getting used to doing this, so that if you feel up to taking pictures of the poll tapes, it's a good thing to learn how to do. And to it also, again, I've said this before, there's a preventative aspect to it. If people know that they are being observed and that the public is carefully watching the election results, they themselves are likely to be more careful. So there's also that preventative aspect of hopefully making sure that the elections are well administered. Walt?
Yes, in 8 years of being a polling inspector, I've never seen poll tapes posted on a wall. I've never seen anybody taking pictures of them. The inspectors just try to get their work done quick and put it in that big envelope. And you mentioned that you can go online and find out or look at the poll tapes online from each district?
No, you can't. We are drafting legislation that will mandate that they put the election results broken down by district and by location online. That is what we want. We have legislation that we have written that we are going to introduce because we think it's so important. But at this point, generally they aggregate the data and they put it online, like by county, like here's the county election results. So if you want those results by district or by location, you're going to have to do a public records request, which can be as simple as just sending an email to the election commissioners and saying, could you please send me the county data broken down by polling location? And you might be able to get it that way. And even just as a spot check, it is good for us to be doing these types of of checks. So it is worthwhile. Patty?
The
Oh, well,
other thing-
and the other thing just about them not putting it on the wall, Walt, here's the statute. And I will send this out to people. The statute says that they must either post the poll tape or read all of the results out loud.
well, it must be, that might be something that's different in each county,
No,
because
No.
we've never done that. We've never done that.
just because they are not doing it doesn't
Okay.
mean it's not the law. They just aren't following the law. The law for New York State
Mhm.
says that unless there is, it has some sort of language that, unless there's a problem, like if the poll tape cannot be printed out because of, malfunction or something like that, they have that out. But if
Mhm.
the machine is functioning properly, they are
Mhm.
legally required to print 2 copies of the poll tape. One is supposed to get posted on the wall or read in its
Mhm.
entirety out loud.
Well, I'll tell you
So-
what, those 4 signatures or 5 signatures at the end of the tape,
Yeah.
just as soon as those are signed, they fold it up and stick it in the sealed plastic sleeve. Nobody is looking at it. Nobody
Well,
comes by at it. They're
I
that
think
quick.
it's going to, if you want to exercise your right as a poll watcher, you have a right to see those numbers. It is in the statute, and we will send you the statute, and it
Mhm.
doesn't take long. You just say, please post it on the wall as you are legally required to do. And I'll take, a few pictures and you'll have it within, 3 to 5 minutes. So in New York City, they know that they're supposed to post it, and they post it or they put it on
Well-
the floor. And there's actually a whole bunch of people, not just like me as a poll watcher. There were people from, all the candidates had poll watchers there too, and they took pictures of the poll tapes for their candidate. So it is
Well,
happening
I'm
throughout.
confused because everybody's supposed to leave the building and we close the doors before we shut down the machines and get the receipt tape out of it.
The
So
poll
there's nobody,
watchers, no, the poll watchers are legally allowed to be in
the
there. It's
poll
called
watchers can be
in
there,
the
but nobody-
guardrail. Yeah, if you look at the statute, it says in the guardrail. That means out after you kick everybody out, the poll watchers are still allowed to be there during the closing of the polls. That is your right as a poll watcher. And it is your
Okay.
right to either have that poll tape read to you or to take some sort of documentation of it, to even to write down the results. Sometimes they get their sticklers and they don't want photography in the polling location.
Yeah.
It's supposed to, it shouldn't be a big deal. Once the polls are closed, it shouldn't matter if you take a picture, but sometimes they make you literally just write down the results. In which case, I mean, if it's a presidential primary, it's not going to be that many candidates on there. It's one candidate. It won't take you long to jot down the results. And even if there's like 3 poll tapes or 4 poll tapes, it won't take you that long. If they're not doing it, I would suggest that you follow up with them ahead of time if you're going to be
Mhm.
a poll watcher. And I will make a note to send you the statute.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
That's what I need.
I'm putting in the chat so I remember. Okay, it is 8:28. So we're scheduled until 8:30. Again, as I did last time, I will stay on for an extra 10 minutes and take questions. But I just want to know, is there anybody who's just confused about something that they feel is essential? Like you have like a real point of confusion that if you had to go out and do this tomorrow, you wouldn't be sure what to do. Just speak up. You don't have to raise your hand. Any like real confused anybody who's really confused about something? Patty?
Well, I'm not confused. Well, not usually, but you were talking about the statute. I'd like to have, so you're going to send out that statute,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
law, so that way, in case anybody gives me whatever, I can say blah, 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 and this is the statute. Okay,
Yes,
you're going
I
to
will
email that to
Yep.
us?
I will send it
Oh,
out to
good.
everybody.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Anybody confused? Janice?
You said, is it just one poll tape or is there multiple poll tapes at the end of the day?
The poll
It's
tape
one
is
per machine.
one per machine, just as Walt said, one per machine.
Per machine. Okay, so if you have 4 machines, you've got to take pictures of 4 different tapes.
That is correct. If the machine, meaning the scanner, the electronic poll books don't produce poll tapes.
There may be
These are,
multiple districts on one machine, so multiple districts will be on one receipt. Know what I mean?
And it's
One
per
receipt tape.
machine though. Each machine will have a poll tape.
That is correct.
Yes,
And then sometimes it seems a little confusing. What he's saying is if there's two districts, you might have the poll tape for one district and then the poll tape might continue, I think, for a second district. So it might seem like it's
see.
repeating. Those
That's
poll
correct.
tapes, they can be confusing. They go on for a long time and you're like, oh, what is this? I thought I just saw that. So I think what Walt's saying there is if they have two districts on one machine, it'll print out one district and you'll see all the candidates, and then it'll print out another district and you'll see the candidates. This is actually a good race to get started because it's a presidential primary and there just isn't that much on the ballot. So it should be a little simpler than usual.
Good warm-up.
Yes, yes, Esther, exactly. After the public has left the polls. The poll tapes are after the close of polls because as you can imagine, they are closing down. They do their procedures to close down the scanners. And then after part of the closing down of the scanners is the running of the poll tapes. So that's part of the procedure. If you get to them in time and they're nice, you can say, when you print the poll tapes, could you just print me an extra copy of each poll tape, please? And that is so much easier than taking a picture. And sometimes if they're nice, they will do it. Often they'll just be like looking at you like you've lost your mind. But it's worth asking because it'll save you a lot of time and trouble. Just tell them in advance. I was just wondering, please, would you mind printing me an extra copy of the poll tape when you print the poll tapes?
In my experience, once the poll tape is printed, the screen changes to have you shut it down. There's no opportunity to print another one.
They have to put it in advance how many copies they want. They always print 2, or they're legally supposed to print 2. So when they tell the machine how many they want, they just have to tell it they want 3.
We only print 1 in Erie County.
All kinds of things going on up there, Walt.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you. They're supposed to
Yeah.
print 2. I will send everybody that statute. Who is saying that they didn't get the Excel spreadsheet? Esther, I remember distinctly sending it to you. Isn't your email is Starlight, right? I totally sent it to you. I sent it to you right before the meeting started, so maybe you didn't see it come in. I sent those emails out about 6:45, 6:50 maybe. I was running late.
Yeah.
But just check your email. I think you do have it. Okay, so what would be great, when I sent you those emails, there is one question on there, and it is, do you think that you can get your own certificate, or do you think that you need help? And what would be great right now is if everybody just put into the chat your name, your county, and say either need certificate or can get certificate. And if you say you can get it and then you can't, don't worry, come back to us, and then we'll try. But that'll give us a good idea of who we need to start with, and which counties we really need to start getting these certificates, because we need to get them to you. Early voting is starting March 23rd and today is the 13th. So we have 10 days to get all our paperwork together.